I'm Justine Rosenthal, editor of The National Interest. We're here today with Dimitri Simes, president of the Nixon Center and publisher of The National Interest. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
We are going to hopefully go over your thoughts about the Obama foreign policy team. It seems to now be taking shape, and we may be able to get a little bit of a sense of where we think his policy may be headed. So if you could first talk in general about what message he sent in going to the State Department on his second day in office.
Well, that was obviously a very encouraging message for those who believe that the United States foreign policy relied excessively on the military and that diplomacy should once again to become a very important interest. I also think that people at the State Department who felt somewhat underappreciated during the Bush administration, they clearly were pleased and excited. So far, so good. Having said that, if you look at the appointments, the picture is quite mixed. Robert Gates is somebody whom I greatly respect, who is a pragmatist, experienced, and is a person who has his own mind, is known for that. At the same time, he is a Republican. It was already announced that he would not stay in the administration for very long. He doesn't have a power base in the Democratic Party. For all these reasons, the question is how much of a player he is going to be. He was able to interview people who would become his principal deputies, but these were not his own people. So he is going to be surrounded by a group who probably would be looking for the post-Gates era. General Jones, new national security advisor, again, is a highly reputable professional, distinguished soldier, but he is not known to have a special relationship with the president, at least not yet. And the question is, what is the role of the national security advisor? If you look at Henry Kissinger, it was quite clear. He was brought as national security advisor because Richard Nixon intended to be national security president. He admired Kissinger's foreign policy philosophy, and he knew what he wanted Kissinger to do. Does Mr. Obama have a foreign policy philosophy? And if he doesn't, would he be able to use General Jones very effectively? And then finally Hillary Clinton. It's a very interesting appointment. A lot of people in the foreign policy community preferred Senator Obama to Senator Clinton because they were concerned about Senator Clinton foreign policy credentials, that now suddenly she is Secretary of State. Now, she of course have supported regime change in Iraq even during the Clinton administration. She of course supported the invasion of Iraq. She became a champion of color revolutions in the post-Soviet space. She was a very strong supporter of Israel, as you would expect from a senator from New York. So you don't quite know where she stands on foreign policy issues, or at least how does she fit in President Obama's promise to have change in foreign policy. Is it going to be change back to the Clinton administration? If that is the case, many of us are not going to applaud.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by change back to the Clinton administration? What do you see as the differences in the foreign policy stances of both Bush and Clinton, and what that might mean for Obama?
Well, where Bush stood on foreign policy is fairly well known. What is less well understood, at least in many quarters, that what we had before Bush, during Clinton, was essentially Bush-light. The Clinton foreign policy was dominated by liberal interventionists who believed in nation building, who took the United States in wars of choice in the Balkans. At the same time, they were sleeping at will as far as fundamental US national security priorities were concerned, first and foremost terrorism, Al-Qaeda, and etc. They mismanaged profoundly the relationship with Russia during the post-Soviet period. So a lot of things which we did not quite like as far as the Bush foreign policy was concerned, these things have started in a major way during the Clinton administration. And mind you, we already knew about Al-Qaeda attacks on US embassies in Africa. We already knew about what happened to Cole, the destroyer. We knew that Al-Qaeda was a major threat. And what was the Clinton administration doing about that? Very little. They were preoccupied with the so-called triumphs in the Balkans. And it was the administration which was triumphalist and devoid of a real sense of strategic priority. So Clinton, as a Secretary of State, obviously is going to be different, or at least we hope she's going to be different than Hillary Clinton, the First Lady. But so far, not so good.
However, we've seen two appointments announced yesterday of special envoys. Richard Holbrooke to Pakistan and Senator Mitchell, former Senator Mitchell, to Israel and Palestine. That seems to send a message that President Obama is very concerned about these regions that potentially were ignored by the Clinton administration and the threats ignored by the Clinton administration. So how does that tie into concerns about Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State?
Well, let me start with Senator Mitchell. I don't know him very well, but I know him for many years and was always greatly impressed with him. Was greatly impressed during our conversations and even more impressed with him as a statesman. What I like about this appointment is that this is not somebody who is going to play political games with the Middle East peace settlement. Senator Mitchell has his own mind. He has a record of independent thought. He is a senior statesman, and he is not running for anything. I don't think that he was trying to use this appointment as a stepping stone for some other glorious pursuits in life. It's not going to be easy to press for peace in the Middle East, because pressing for peace in the Middle East would require not just to press the Palestinians, not just to press Israel's neighbors, it would require to press Israel. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy in general, but if you think about the current economic environment, President Obama's priorities at home, he really would need somebody tough, reputable, and independent-minded to have any chance of progress on the Middle East peace settlement. That is why, in my view, Senator Mitchell is the right man for the job. As far as Ambassador Holbrooke is concerned, well, the best I can say about this appointment is that hopefully it is just a political payoff to Ambassador Holbrooke for his long-term service to the Democratic Party, the Clinton administration, and his long association with Secretary Clinton, to whom he was one of chief foreign policy advisors. First of all, I don't quite understand why do you need a special envoy to Afghanistan and Pakistan. As Ambassador Holbrooke acknowledged himself, these are two different countries. They are not exactly at war with each other. We have American ambassadors in both countries. We have US troops in Afghanistan with their own commander. We have General Petraeus as an overall US security coordinator for the area. This appointment sounds to me a little bit artificial. What concerns me is that Ambassador Holbrooke, with his well-known tendency for self-aggrandizement, coupled with a lack of strategic discipline, that he may try to use this appointment to propel himself in the position of Secretary of State or something else later. And that he would start pushing President Karzai, that he would start pushing the Pakistani government to do things which would not only be natural for them, but which would be very dangerous in terms of their domestic stability. And Pakistan is a country which is now democratic, which really wants to be close to the United States, but has a very complex domestic politics, has a divided public, and nuclear weapons. And unless we are very careful, we can do a lot of harm in Pakistan, and I have to say in Afghanistan as well. And let me say that Ambassador Holbrooke's greatest diplomatic achievement, the achievement of which he is very proud, is what he was able to accomplish in the Balkans. In mind you, whatever he was able to accomplish in Bosnia, Bosnia is still bitterly divided. He promoted Kosovo independence, and that led to the independence of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and of course the war between Russia and Georgia, and essentially a defeat of an American ally in the Caucasus. He have promoted color revolutions and allied himself with most anti-Russian Ukrainian politicians, and that contributed to a recent gas crisis between Russia and Ukraine. It is dangerous to have somebody so talented on one level in terms of tactical ingenuity, but devoid of a kind of conceptual strategic responsibility, and at the same time a man of an unlimited ambition, in a position when I have to say he can do a lot of things which would cost the United States dearly. So the best I can hope for is that this is an artificial appointment, that this is a political payoff, and that Ambassador Holbrooke will understand pretty soon that President Obama is not President Clinton. It is a different era, and we don't need aggressive American nation building in Afghanistan and Pakistan.